Hello and welcome. My name is Gina Curcio. I'm a corporate partnership account manager here at UAGC and host for this session, Insights in Action, How Stakeholder Perspectives Drive Change. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC related materials. Microphones will be muted for the presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you to Dr. Kelly Olson Stewart, Department Head, K-12 and Higher Ed Professor, Associate Professor in the Division of Education Professions at UAGC. She has held leadership roles across faculty councils and graduate programs and brings deep experience in teacher development and curriculum design. Her research area of interest is online faculty retention and developing supportive communities to enhance their experience, providing resources and engagement. Without further ado, the floor is all yours, Kelly.
Thanks so much, Gina. Thanks for being here. We are a small but mighty group and happy to be here to present Insights in Action, How Stakeholder Perspectives Drive Change. And I am thrilled to be here with four of my very favorite people, students that I have seen from the first class in the doctoral program here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. I have seen them grow, change. Two of them you see are wearing their fancy outfits with their doctoral hoods. So I'm happy to say that Dr. Angie Rooney and Dr. Crystal Parker, we were able to celebrate together in May at graduation, and it was a thrill to meet in person when we had spent a significant amount of time together on Zoom. And the two that are framing these lovely pictures are Summer and Kelsey, and they will soon be wearing robes. They are right at the point of starting their dissertation studies, and so it's very exciting to have all four leaders in their fields. And one of the things I think that will be really interesting to hear about and capture today is how their passions for their topics drove their research, and yet they were mindful consistently of their biases because they chose topics that they care deeply about. And then also how this interest is now living out in their professional careers. And certainly two of them are just at the cusp of this, so we can help each other across. But I'm going to have them talk to you today about their studies, and then we'll dive in a little bit to what they've learned about themselves and their journeys. So without further ado, we'll start here with Summer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the purpose of my study, it's a basic qualitative study, is to explore how educators of Gen Alpha are navigating kind of the current climate in which they're teaching, so the social, political, and emotional challenges that they face. And this study aims to understand how these specific experiences, kind of the context in which they teach and the specific generation they're teaching, affect their self-efficacy and how they perceive the sustainability of the profession. Next slide. So this is a basic qualitative study, and I'm actually scheduling my first interview with a teacher this week. So I'm very excited about that. I am looking for participants who are current K-8 teachers and work in public or public charter schools and are certificated in the state in which they teach. And I have reached out. I'm using network sampling, so I've reached out through a variety of colleagues and my own professional network to identify participants who are not known to me. And I've had a little bit of success reaching out to them, and have had several teachers that are interested in participating in my study reach out. And we're currently working through that scheduling process right now. So really looking at these teachers, they're teachers who have at least 1 year of experience teaching, and kind of are immersed in teaching currently. So they are experiencing the current context, which is the social and sociocultural and sociopolitical factors that are happening that are impacting education. We currently have the government shutdown, which is impacting some teachers. We also have the rifts and reduction in force that are happening in the Department of Education. So there's a lot of funding changes. There's also a lot of like sociocultural pressure that are happening from families and parents. So there's kind of at all sides, just a lot of chaos and turmoil happening. And so I'm really looking at how kind of that is impacting these teachers as they are teaching this new generation of students. So Generation Alpha was born starting in the year 2012 to about the year 2025. And these are students who are, and this generation is incredibly diverse. They grew up completely immersed in technology. So there's just a lot of things that could potentially be different about teaching this generation, especially as we look at the post-COVID landscape. So I'm really interested in how all of this context and all of these experiences are shaping how teachers feel about their own ability to teach, but also how they kind of cope with the demands of all of these pressures. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you, Dr. Stewart.
Thanks, Summer. One of the things that is helpful too for Summer and Kelsey specifically is if you have considerations or wonders about their upcoming studies, if you would put those in the chat for them to consider. And then for our graduates, for Angie and Crystal, I think what will be most interesting is hearing how their study, their experience here at UAGC then has shaped their practices now. Both of them will talk a little bit about how they have barred the doors for them to have a moment here to be with us since they're both principals in schools. So thanks. I'll turn it over to you, Angie. Dr. Rooney, I should say.
All right, great. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the country. I'm Dr. Rooney. I am a principal at an elementary campus. And so, yes, I have my door blocked off. I have both secretaries ready to pounce if anyone tries to come in my door. So my study was a qualitative phenomenological research study aimed to evaluate elementary school teachers' perception of their resources, support, and training to effectively manage students who exhibited challenging behaviors in low socioeconomic classrooms. So really just examining their lived experiences and the reasons why they chose to stay in the profession. So next slide. Okay, so all of you that are in education, I'm telling you things that you already know, but teacher turnover is a critical issue in our country, and it's costing states billions of dollars, along with it's affecting student achievement. So some of the top reasons that teachers leave the profession is ineffective school leadership, salary, or job stressors. And so managing a classroom, managing challenging student behavior falls into that job stressors category. So mainly talking about novice teachers, that's your 5 years or less teachers who have been in the profession. They're really the most susceptible to turnover because they don't have that knowledge base. They don't have that toolbox filled with different strategies to use when managing especially challenging student behaviors. A lot of them feel that they were inadequately prepared when they were in college. They didn't get those field experiences, and just they didn't feel as though they had relevant educational experiences in college. And so when they get to the field, managing a classroom is one of the most challenging aspects to the profession. Just really high stress, lots of burnout in the educational career field. So then a lot of times teachers will opt for punitive consequences rather than using, proactive strategies and interventions. And really, this is just because they have a lack of knowledge. They just don't know how to handle the challenging behaviors that they're facing. And so, so really, what do teachers need? What do novice teachers need? So the first thing that has been found is that teachers really want relevant professional development that is applicable and pertinent to their classroom experiences. So they want to be able to have some background and professional development that really talks about that challenging behavior, the chairs being thrown across the room, the fights, things that are, really high level that are new for teachers to have to be able to manage. And they don't feel as though the professional development is at that rigor, at that level. And then they know that they need to create relationships with students, but they don't know how. They haven't had that training in how to create those relationships. And so that can be hard for them because they just don't know how to do that. And then also another thing about professional development, they don't want the one and done. They want ongoing professional development where maybe they're working with, they go to a seminar, they learn some different strategies, they bring it back to the classroom, they have an instructional coach, they have, maybe the trainer from that professional development comes into their classroom, gives them, watches them work the strategy, gives them some advice, and then they can put it into use, and then they can be observing, and they can have kind of that ongoing relationship. The next thing that was just, it's so important for teachers is to have support from district admin support. They really want to feel like admin is in the trenches with them, and that they are able to observe veteran teachers, maybe observe admin handling some of the different behaviors. And that's always, there's always that really fine line where you have to find where you're supporting the teacher and you're implementing some of those strategies so they can observe, but then also not taking authority away from the teacher in the classroom, because you never want the teacher to lose that authority in the classroom. And so, but just being able to have the teachers go in and observe veteran teachers, maybe using some of those strategies and interventions, and then they can take it back to their classrooms and they can emulate some of those different strategies they've learned. Then when those strategies work for the new teachers, that really builds their confidence. And then they're able to learn more strategies, and they're feeling more confident and comfortable putting those strategies into play. And also the students recognize when the teacher feels confident in using those strategies. And so some of that helps also. Additionally, the students who they make good relationships with, that also helps because they start to know what those students' triggers are. And so they're able to be a little bit more proactive when it comes to the management of students. So really just when it all boils down to when admin, teachers, instructional coaches, mentors, counselors, they're all moving in the same direction, they're communicating, they're supporting each other, they're collaborating, then teachers are going to be more effective in their management, student learning is going to occur, and then teachers are going to feel more empowered, morale is going to be up, and teachers are then going to stay in the profession. So I appreciate all of you, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll pass it to the next speaker.
Thanks, Angie. I'm super curious too to hear how your studies are impacting your professional world. So Kelsey's just about to launch her study. So we're going to turn it over to you and hear about your study and then next steps.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Kelsey Martinez, and I am library faculty at Chandler Gilbert Community College, which is an urban community college in the greater Phoenix area. I'm a graduate of community college myself, so I'm super passionate about this context. So before I had my study topic, I knew I wanted to study something at the community college. And so my research really focuses on community college library leaders and their perceptions on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how this intersects with the retention of non-white librarians. So essentially in the library science field, in the literature, there is an acknowledged problem of lack of diversity, demographic diversity. So one limitation of my study is that I am just focusing on the demographic aspect. Our field is very white, it's 86% white, and that statistic has not changed over, since the 1990s. This has been a discussed problem. So that's sort of the general problem of my study. But my study is really specifically looking at again, how the community college library leaders are viewing DEI and then the impact of DEI on retention. So what I found in my research is that DEI is often utilized as sort of a solution to this diversity problem, right? So there's strategies for recruitment. There's also strategies, of course, like collection development and providing events that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But in terms of the organizational culture, diversity work is often assigned to librarians of color, and that can have a reverse effect, right? So their libraries use this diversity, equity, inclusion focus, and they say that it's a really important value. This is coming from professional organizations such as the American Library Association, the Association of College and Research Libraries, the ACRL, which is essentially the governing body of the academic libraries, which a community college library falls under, right? So there's these diversity statements and these core values, but really what can happen is the emphasis on DEI can burn people out. And that's all, all higher education folks can feel this impact of diversity fatigue, which is basically a characterized weariness because of constant resistance to these efforts, to this intangible and intangible, what's called diversity work, which are efforts to sort of disrupt oppressive systems. So I'm super excited to start researching because I'm just super curious about how the community college library leaders are approaching this problem. One of my research questions specifically focuses on institutional and contextual factors that impact DEI approaches and implementations. I'm sure all of us in education are aware that the Department of Education has essentially outlawed DEI, cannot be funded with any public funds, and we know that community college libraries and community colleges at large, are publicly funded institutions. So there's been a major shift in workflows. It's not necessarily that the work has stopped for DEI, but it certainly has had to change. So I'm really interested to see how library leaders at the community college are handling this. I'm also using a basic descriptive qualitative methodology. A case study would have been really interesting, but because of these changes from the Department of Education, diversity policies, diversity statements at the college level and at the library level have all but disappeared. So that triangulation of data I thought would be a little bit more difficult to measure. So that's why I decided my research questions really fit better with the descriptive basic qualitative study. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the purpose of the study, right, is to really focus on the perceptions and the descriptions that community college library leaders provide. And thinking about the stakeholder aspect, these are really big stakeholders because they have relationships with their employees, but they're also having relationships with the college administration. So sort of the leader is this in between. So I'm really interested in their perceptions. I'm hopeful that the study may offer some ideas for retention strategies. And then again, it's really just going to provide an understanding of how these leaders are shifting because of this larger macro level changes. And then you can go to the next slide, Dr. S. So I made a visualization of my study. You have the community college library leaders up top, which are the unit of analysis. And then I have the two kind of pillars of DEI and retention, and that arrow in between just indicating how they influence one another. And then below those two are sort of these other pillars that are also impacting DEI and retention. So underneath DEI, you have recruitment and retention strategies, as well as demographics. So I was surprised to find in the literature that retention is often just grouped together with recruitment, and it's not really extrapolated and focused on or emphasized as much as I was expecting it to be. It's kind of an afterthought. And recruitment is usually the main focus. And then underneath retention, you have the norms and values of the library, of the college. You have whiteness, which is both demographics as well as a culture. And then you have leadership competency. So the literature showed that leadership really does impact retention as well. I'm sure many of us can relate to that on a personal level. And then I have my frameworks on the side. The theory of racialized organizations and organizational culture are the lenses I'll be using to kind of analyze my data. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelsey. Exciting study to come. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Parker. Also has chairs up against her door because small children could be interrupting her meeting if that were not the case. So I'll turn it over to you, Crystal.
Thank you so much. I am Dr. Parker. I'm a principal at a small private school full of wonderful children. My research was on parental perception of screen-based media on their preschoolers' literacy skills. So I wanted to explore how parents perceived the impact of screen-based media. Next slide. My why. So this stems from in 2011, I was a family services specialist, and I served and worked closely with families in our city here to ensure that children were meeting their developmental milestones from birth to age 5. A lot of our parents believed that the screen was a great tool to help their children learn to read, and they were picking up so many, wonderful things, learning their shapes, they were learning to count. But oftentimes when it was assessments, oftentimes when I gave their assessments or we did different testing, they showed differently. So that really sparked a lasting interest on how parents really perceive or use or how the screens really impact their learning outcomes for our early learners. So that was definitely my why then and now, as it's still very, very relevant. We see the children with their tablets and their parents' phones, and everyone has their different perceptions or reasonings to using them. So that is still very relevant, and I don't think much has changed. If anything, I see more usage now than I did then. Next slide, please. So my research, what it was, I interviewed them, I surveyed them. I really wanted to focus on the parents' expectations and what their beliefs was. So, like I said, I used what I used was interviewing, and I used surveys. So I surveyed first, then I interviewed, and then we came back for a follow-up, looking at their beliefs, how they used them, and what their reality was. Next slide. So their beliefs. So during this survey, I found out that a lot of children engaged in process of elimination clicking. So they enjoyed the music, the lights, they enjoyed the games, but they were really clicking through options until they got the correct answer, and then everybody celebrates. I later observed this as an elementary teacher where our students were using Corlexia, and we thought it was a great tool, but the closer I looked at the children, they were figuring out patterns and sequences and memorizing answers to go back and do it correctly, and that would increase their scores. So that was a lot of memorization going on. So that was, even past preschool using the screens. So parents often perceive this repetition as genuine learning, but in reality, it reflected a limited comprehension. This connected to what's called a transfer deficit, and that suggests that children struggle to apply what they learn from screens to real life contexts. So, and that that highlighted the gap between the digital and the interaction between meaningful skill development. Next slide, please. Okay, our reality. The reality was, so what I did was I looked at apps that were used. I looked at different screenings, or not screenings, streamings, I apologize, YouTube and different things, anything that was on a screen that was used to think that was increasing literacy skills or helping to develop literacy skills. I found that the apps, when children played on the apps, what appeared to be learning was often guessing through trial and error. Through the YouTube shows, the children demonstrated memorization. They did a lot of mimicking, but it was not true comprehension. Doing the research, we looked at the screens and found that they were commonly used as a babysitter or a pacifier to keep the children calm or occupied, or even just like a babysitter, giving the parents time to get, things done around the household. And the parents' perception was that a lot of them believed that their children were actually learning, and they thought the tool or the screen was doing what it was supposed to do. So they thought the screen, oh, well, they're learning, they're quiet, the screen is teaching them, and all is well. And they didn't realize that it was limited engagement. Next slide. So I'm sorry, thank you. The difference maker was co-viewing. So when you put co-viewing, and co-viewing is just the parent sitting with the child, guiding the child through whatever's going on the screen, and just interacting. So when you add in the co-viewing, the interview showed that parents perceived learning during the screen was, like I said, the tool was doing its job. All right. But when you added in the co-viewing, the parents were then changing the atmosphere. It was going from the babysitter of the passive learning to active learning. The co-viewing changed the dynamic by turning into a shared learning time. We're sharing this time together. So now we have a serve and return involved here. The parents are talking. The parents are using their words to guide. So we're increasing vocabulary, actually. Also, we're strengthening the neural connections and building vocabulary, and this helps the child learn how to express their thoughts and solve their problems. So that is something that the screen alone wouldn't do, because the screen isn't adaptive. The child needs the adaptivity of, going back and forth and being corrected in real time, and learning, okay, that was wrong, and this, let's talk about why this is right. So they're learning to problem solve. They're learning to express their thoughts or their feelings, and to understand others, because now that parent is continuously interjecting. When adults co-view and guide the child through media use, it bridges a transfer deficit, and that's the difficulty that the children face, not being able to apply what they're doing on the screen to real life situations and or day-to-day situations. Research also shows that co-viewing improves comprehension and vocabulary. The adult is actually now giving context. That's why they say the best teacher is play. When I'm walking you through what we're doing in the kitchen area or what we're building in the block area, we're giving them that vocabulary. We're teaching them, and it's building their understanding, and they're learning to apply things differently. So as the adult interactions provide the context, it reinforces the language. Like I said, adds the vocabulary, and it connects that digital screen to the content experiences and makes literacy more meaningful. So for our takeaways, co-viewing definitely takes screen time from passive to active learning. Children do not learn from the screen. They learn from the give and take, or that serve and return with corrective responses. With co-viewing, the parent allows them time to reflect, give clarity. They can think out loud and connect things to that real life and learn to comprehend. And then parents now get to regulate their attention, decrease overstimulation and overuse. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. If only I could get my click to work. Thanks, everybody. I want to shout out to fast and furious presenters, right? Condensing 150, 200 pages of a dissertation into 6 minutes, and our 2B creating a study to condense that in just a couple slides. I also want to do a shout out. I think you probably have all noticed folks in the chat, but committee members of these students are in the house. So Dr. Robinson is here. Dr. Beatty, who is an incredible methodological reader, as well as all of these students' instructor, is in the house. And Dr. Sorensen is here, who was the committee member as well for Angie and Dr. Rooney, I should say, and Summer. And so happy to have you here. I know we're right at the edge of time. If there are any specific questions or comments that you have, there is a survey there that I see is in the chat as well, but happy to answer anything. And just an encouragement to go out and seek your stakeholders' perspectives, whatever your role is in the world. I think we can all affirm that getting the perspective of the people that we serve and want to be a part of makes a huge difference. So listening to their stories has been really impactful. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, presenters, for sharing your passion and shaping the future while you navigate the landscape that you're in. It was truly inspiring to hear from you today. Please click on that survey below and go ahead and fill that out to nominate this presentation for conference awards and share your feedback about this presentation. Thank you so much for attending today's session. Please provide that feedback to us and keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate it.